Yeah, we're going to go back to the line. We'll make it up as we go. All right, welcome everybody to Cotuit Library on this glorious, crisp autumn afternoon. This is another event in our Royston Nash Music Appreciation Series, which we started almost 2 years ago when people left memorial donations in his name to the library. And we decided to leverage those funds and get some grants from the Arts Foundation and the Mid-Cape Cultural Council. And we have been able to fund 2 years of sort of musical education programming. So not just an enjoyable concert, but something where you actually learn something you might not have known about a different genre of music. That is why there are little evaluations on your chair. The funders like to have a little bit of feedback, so if you have a few minutes after the concert just to quickly answer that, I would appreciate it. Today we have Kathy Spirtes, who is on our board, and Jennie Wiley, our former director, and they are going to be showing you 2 different forms of an instrument called the dulcimer. And as you can see, they're quite different. I'm not going to do too much. We're not actually going to have a duel unless you guys, you know how when you have to clap so that the bell stays alive. Fight, fight.
Yeah, good luck. Good luck.
You can take her.
I've got speed.
But I'm not going to do too much more introduction because that's part of what they're going to be presenting as a little bit about how they got involved in this music and such. All right, so welcome to Dueling Dulcimers. Thank you.
Well, hello. Thank y'all for coming. I'm going to start off. I'm going to do something typically one doesn't do. I'm going to play a song kind of hot off the press. I just learned it, so, you know, that adds, I mean, I'm already under performance anxiety.
This is a safe space.
You know, and I turned myself a little bit. This is always a question with a hammer dulcimer, in that if I'm facing you, you can't see my instrument or what I'm doing, and I personally think it's kind of interesting to see people play this instrument. So I turned a little bit to give you a little sense of me playing. So Josephine's Waltz. Always the last note to be right. I'm going to go over a little bit briefly some of the history. They pretty much think this hammered dulcimer started in around the 10th century. And if you go to Europe, you'll see in some of the stone friezes angels playing something similar with some kind of sticks or hammers. Now, this instrument, I have a little visual here. It is known around the world. The Persians have a version they call the santur. The Turkish also call theirs the santur. You can see they're a little different than what I'm playing, which is more similar to what Americans are playing now. Yankin is definitely different, and that's in China, Mongolia, and then the cymballine, which almost looks like a piano, that they've just lifted the top off the piano. That's usually about 90 pounds. If I complain about my 16-pound instrument, I need to remember the cymbalons. And then the Hochbrecht, which is a German style of dulcimer. So you can come up and look at these these pictures, if you like. The dulcimer probably came over with the colonists back in the 1700s. It was at the turn of the century. Many more stringed instruments were popular. This instrument was even sold. When I say the turn of the century, the one we weren't involved in, from 1899 to 1900, it was even sold in the Sears Roebuck catalog. But they say two things have factored into the decline was a decreasing number of players, and this was, and also instruments, and then there became more popular forms of entertainment. The radio, in the early 1900s, the radio, the piano, what's another one? I guess that's it. The radio, the piano, the record player. So now, but this instrument experienced a rebirth in the 50s and 60s, along with the folk era, and both players and builders emerged. So this instrument was made in North Carolina by a man named Jerry Reed Smith. I was actually down in his shop. I got to pick out my wood. I got to pick out some of the other details, which was kind of fun. That's a little bit about my instrument, and now we'll hear from the mountain dulcimer.
Yeah, so obviously really, really different. Not even sure why. Sometimes they call them both the same type of instrument. Other than strings, they don't have much else really in common. Where she's hammering, we're strumming. This instrument is a purely American invention. It is based on zithers from around the world, particular Eastern European zithers. There is one from Germany called let's see if I can pronounce this, the Scheitholz, which is probably the closest in similarity to this kind of instrument. But it came over and it has influences from Scotland as well, because when I start to play, you'll notice that there is always a droning tone at the bottom. So that is part of the holdover from Scottish music, from the bagpipes. It was invented in the early 1800s in the Appalachian Mountains, particularly in Pennsylvania was where the very first ones started to pop up. And it was played by all types of people who could not read music at all. This was the benefit of this instrument. You did not need to be able to read music. You just need to be able to hear it and then copy it. You can play chords on it, but most people start out learning just melodies and letting the droning sound happen at the bottom. That's the most common way to learn it. And it was encouraged to learn over top of the other instrument that was sort of popular in the day, which was the fiddle. Because the fiddle was considered the devil's instrument, because people would dance when the fiddle would get played. And if you were playing the dulcimer, you're probably playing church music. So nobody was dancing to that for sure. I will tell you that later on, there's a lot of different constructions, as we'll see later on. I'll tell you about a really interesting one later on about how they got past some of that boringness of the dulcimer playing only church music. Did you want to play something? Do you want me to play something?
Why don't you play something?
Okay. I first started playing this, I actually happened upon it by accident in a music store in Pennsylvania, which is where I grew up. I grew up in the Appalachian region. And I had never heard of it before, but I'd played many instruments in my life. And so I walked in, I looked at it hanging on the wall, and I said, I'll take one of those. And I took it home. It was super affordable, and it wasn't so hard to learn how to play. In my hand. So I have performance anxiety as well. I bet you couldn't tell. I'm going to play a really quick medley of just 3 little old folk tunes. Ora Lee is from the American Civil War period. Drink to Me Only with Thine Eyes is an English tune from 1616. And the last one is Careless Love, which I was unable to find any origins for. sure you could hear that non-stop drone at the bottom that's always kind of there, sort of like a bagpipe.
Do all mountain dulcimers use some kind of...
Yeah, so this is a noter and then a pick. Yes, but some mountain dulcimers use their fingers. I just don't have enough calluses to really do that because these top two notes are, these top two strings are really, really thin. So sometimes at home when I'm playing, I'll just do that for a little while, but it doesn't take long for me to start to get some pretty gnarled up fingertips from it. The way that this is tuned, there's a couple of ways that you can tune a mountain dulcimer. And there's the Ionian tuning, which is when the bottom string is a D, the next three strings are A's. So it would be a low A. This would be the D below middle C, and then the A and the other two A's are higher. The next one that is also common is mixolydian, which is when the lower string and the top two strings are D, but the one in the middle is an A. However, because of the nature of the instrument, you really can tune it all types of ways. And I have, today I'm tuned mine so that I've got a type of mixolydian. So I have a bottom D and top two Ds, but I don't enjoy the sound of the A that drones. Sometimes I find that really, really distracting. So I tune my other droning string to a G. And I just find it's a little more melodic. And it bugs me a little less. Other people might like it just fine that way, but for me it bugs me. And then we use a pick. Sometimes you can use your fingers. Some people will use their fingers. You get a different sound. So, for instance, if I'm picking, or if I use fingers, the traditional way is with a turkey feather, because in the Appalachian Mountains we all hunt. And we don't let anything go to waste. And this is actually my turn. This is the sound I like the best. It has a softer sound to it when this is used. Hear it more when it's going across the strings than you can with some of the others, but that's my favorite method. How about you? Tell us
I
about
have a
your
lot more
hammers.
strings.
Yep.
And so it takes me about, this is considered a 4.5 octave instrument, but it takes me at least 30 minutes to tune. So I don't tune quite, I don't tune every day. I don't tune as much as
I'll
Jennie
tune a
would
couple
tune.
times today.
One of the things I wanted to show you today was just the breadth of the things that I play on this instrument. The next tune is going to be more of a hymn. I know it as Love Divine, All Love's Excelling. And some people know it as my Blue Mountain Home. And I'm sure there's a couple other set of words out there for the same tune. Oh, yeah.
Sounds like what you're gonna hear in heaven.
Well, I know.
It's very celestial. Like, I totally get the angel thing. It's so pretty.
Well, you know, I'll mention, you know, one of the things that I've been playing this instrument for almost 30 years. I heard it first in Virginia when I lived in Roanoke, Virginia, and I said, I'm going to get one of those one of these days, and it wasn't until I moved to Seattle, because I moved to Seattle within 2 years of hearing it, and Seattle happens to have the largest maker of dulcimers, the Dusty Strings Company, and that was my very first dulcimer, Dusty Strings, and but all these years, I've struggled with a niche. I mean, you know, I guess if you're a guitarist, you've got rock bands, and you know, I mean, or if you're an oboist, a symphony or whatever. But where's my niche? And so, and you have to memorize everything. So I don't, you know, I only have so much bandwidth, and it's just, you know, so I mean, I can't take requests. I either know it or I don't. Sometimes I can pick it out, but so I have started to find my niche, and it's nursing homes. So I have taken a course with the music for healing and transition, and that has taught me how to play one-on-one for people who are ill and dying. Now I have not really. I need to do an internship at that. But right now I'm playing at 3 different nursing homes on the Cape. So I'm trying to move my repertoire to more songs. Like now, I just learned a song. She called it Aura Lee. I call it Love Me Tender.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to start learning a
Those
series.
old ladies and old men are singing right along.
No, they are. I debuted that yesterday at JML. So, but I think that's so funny about music. That Aura Lee, Love Me Tender. I mean,
Well, now we know where you got the tune.
Right, exactly. So
Yeah. Oh, so the way, well, this is something I actually can talk about with both the instruments. So there's 2 types of scales. There's a chromatic scale and there's a diatonic scale. Your mountain dulcimer is done in a chromatic scale, which means every half step there's a note a half step above or a half step below, and at least for 1 octave, if not for multiple, for you. Whereas the mountain dulcimer is always a diatonic scale. So it means that there's 5 whole notes and 2 half notes in the entire thing. So you really only got 1 octave on here, which means that a lot of the songs end up being in the same key over and over and over, which is one of the reasons why it is like a family instrument. You're sitting at home prior to the radio, prior to the piano, and you're wanting to sing songs, you're wanting to sing hymns, you're wanting to sing folk tales or folk songs together as a family. The person who's playing is going to put this in that key that fits for their voice. And then every song that you sing is going to be in basically that key. I mean, it works really well that way. And it also keeps you from needing to read any music because you hum the first note, you find it on the dulcimer, and then you tune to that. A lot of the people who learn how to do this do it completely by ear. So a lot of their music is also memorized. But whereas Kathy says picking something out for her would be really hard, picking something out for me, much easier on the dulcimer, because all I got to do is find the first note and then I'm good to go because I've only got so many to choose from. I'm going to play a hymn. So I was raised, like I said, in Appalachian, Pennsylvania. I was raised in a Mennonite community. So all of the hymns I know are Protestant ones. So if anybody's Catholic, I'm sorry, I don't know those songs. I'm sure they're lovely though. So I'm going to play For the Beauty of the Earth. I don't know if that translates from both sides of the Protestant or the Christian religion, but. many chords. Not as many pretty runs.
Jenny, you fretting one or two strings with that stick?
So you always fret the top two strings. They're really, really close together. So you get a double sound to the melody, and then you have the two droning ones at the bottom. But yeah, and the way that you do this, because it's really easy. When I was first learning it, my noter was going all over the place. I was banging into my other strings, and what I learned was that you use the thumb to create the pressure, but you use the other finger as the guide along the edge. So I'm sliding this finger up and down the side to keep it from pushing over, because when I first started, it sounded bad. Because I was hitting all the wrong places. So, what you got, lady?
Well, my instrument is chromatic, but it's diatonic too, actually. Because I don't have every sharp and flat in every octave, and I have to kind of search for these. Like I only have two. I said it was 4.5 octaves, but I only have 2 D sharps. One here and one. Those are my 2 D sharps, and that's it. So I don't even know what octaves those are in. I think of C4 as middle C, so I describe it sometimes. I start on C3 or whatever, but my instrument goes. So same as yours. I mean, those are just the 8 notes or 7 notes with the 5 whole and the 2 half steps.
Yep.
And down here is D, and I'm with my C sharp. But once I get above the middle, I don't have any C sharps. I just have C naturals.
Wow, that I did not know.
So you'll see me sometimes really spread my hands out, like that first song when I did. I had to go way down to find that dissonant D sharp. So another thing that's interesting about this instrument, there's a lot of duplicate notes. Not like a piano, only 1 note, but I have 3 E's. So all in the
two
same.
D sharps and 3 E's.
Okay. Well, no, I have more than 3 E's, but those were all in the same
All in the
pitch.
same pitch.
Those were all like middle E, and a lot of the notes are. So, and that depends, because one of the things you want E's are flowing around, so you do use a certain note depending upon where you're headed in the instrument. So, I'm going to play a more familiar song, Edelweiss.
comes with 3, 4, or 5 strings. Did I mention that? Okay, so I have a 4-string dulcimer. You can have them in 3 strings, and you can get them in 5 strings. You still tune them basically the same way. The 5-string one gives you more options for playing chords when you get good enough to play chords, which I am not. The 3-string one is just doesn't have that second top melody string, so it's basically the same thing, but just doesn't have that second one. Having the second one, though, does give a fuller sound to that piece of the melody that's at the top. One of the things that I like about the dulcimer is that it really is something you just sort of can play whatever, just pick it up and play, which is, when I do play it, that's how it goes. So, so you might recognize this from the civil rights movement. So I can play something that would have been secular and that a lot of people would have heard, even though it may have come from a more religious background. Or I can play something very religious, which I earlier when I played the hymn. Or I can play something that is likely to have been sung in an Irish pub.
One of the songs that's been requested at the nursing home.
Oh yeah, Cockles and Mussels.
Molly Malone. It's a sad song.
It
You
is.
listen to the words. I guess we all, well, I guess music was one of the ways we all learned, people have always expressed their grief.
Yeah.
And uncertainty. I had something I was going to say about your instrument. So when I see mountain dulcimer music, a lot of times it'll be in tab.
Yeah.
Is it telling you what fret so of all your frets, it tells you to go from first fret to second fret to, okay.
Yeah, so the closest that, you can read music with it. It's not impossible to do. But a lot of times it'll be fret. So I don't know, did anybody here learn shape note like I did? So when we learned how to sing in the Mennonite tradition, we learned shape note because we didn't have musical instruments in the church. So different shapes meant different sounds. It's a little bit the same way as different numbers mean different spots on here. And so they count as 1, 2. It's an open is 0 and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It doesn't even do like a half or anything like that. The whole way up. So it's this really easy way for a kid to learn how to play is because all they're doing is reading numbers. So it's instead of paint by number, it's play by number. So yeah, that's another way you can do it. So you don't have to read music, you just have to know how to count. And you can play this thing, which is nice.
And typically hammered dulcimer music is, because I only have 2 hands, it's not like a piano where I'm looking at right hand treble clef and left hand bass clef. So most hammered dulcimer music is written from like 4 lines below, that's the D, and then up to 3 or 4 above. Now if they want us to go higher than that from the middle area, then they'll put that little 8, to go down 8, 8 notes, so go down an octave. But most music, we don't need to read the bass clef typically. And in fact, I'm going to start learning, it's a Bach piece. I forgot what it is. but it's the piano music. I have the piano music, but mostly it's just the melody, and it starts on the bass clef, and I'm gonna have to rewrite that into my little computer program. Thank goodness we have all those things available to us today, and put it all in the treble clef so I can read that. I am going to play because it's fall, more of a fiddle type tune, Harvest Home Hornpipe. Everybody's Saturday night, everybody's finished in the field and they're gathering down at the Grange to have and all the energy is for the dance. The young people are all excited to meet with others because they live on farms far away from everybody else.
You're describing my Saturday evening as a kid.
Right. So when I play that, that's my vision.
Cool. So a couple of years ago, I went down to Provincetown. So this instrument, I can't remember where it was built. Let's see if I can see on the inside. Pennsylvania. So this one was built in North Carolina, but I bought it in Provincetown. Just one of those weird little things. They have those little artist shacks that are down the pier when you're headed to go on a whale watching trip. I was headed to go on a whale watching trip, and I walked past this shack and I saw dulcimers, but they weren't dulcimers like this. They were dulcimers like this, and all different sizes and shapes. And I was so intrigued, and I spent a lot of time talking to the guy who makes them. He was there making them. They had different sounds. So some of his had more of a deep resonance, like a cello sound. This one, when I play it for you, you're going to notice it has a little bit of a banjo sound. It's tuned exactly the same way. It's fretted almost the same way. Because it's a shorter neck, I don't have a full diatonic. So there's a half note that I don't have on here, which always seems to be the sharp I need. And I don't have it, so then I have to play that other note over a couple of times, which you'll hear. I don't know why they chose that one to leave out, but it's very important. This one I do just play with my finger and slide up and down. The nice thing is that I don't have to slide it for each thing, because if I get somewhere, I do have enough space where I can use more than one finger and then slide as I need it. I have had this for probably 3 years, so I'm kind of still new to it. Let me just check my tuning. So the difference with this one also is the bass string is on the top instead, and the melody strings are on the bottom.
Is that hard to, that seems like that'd be hard to compartmentalize your mind like that.
It is, but
what's
interesting is that because my hand has to wrap around this way, this piece is easy. What I'm still working on is figuring out strumming. So when I strum this way, I'm strumming melody down to bass, right? So I'm doing this direction. When I strum on this one, I'm strumming down. So it's the droning sound that kind of comes out first. And my tune. So bear with me. figure out the strumming. Cello resonance, which I really liked those too, but I couldn't afford those. So
Were they bigger? Were they bigger to get that deeper sound, or were they about the same
bigger.
size?
But so the body of it was wider,
Oh,
so you
okay.
could get a little more of that sound. They were a little bigger, but they were also made of a better wood. So the wood makes a big difference too, as to what kind of a sound you're going to get out of this type of instrument. I don't know if it does with yours or not. I know you said you got to
No, we
choose.
just, but I chose based on looks, not on sound. I tell you the truth, I don't know. He didn't say, well, this will sound better than that one. You know, remember that old commercial, no, Charlie, we don't want tuna that looks good, we want tuna that tastes good. One thing I think's kind of fun I'll mention is that there are not that many people playing this instrument. So the tribe does gather, and this weekend I'm going to Connecticut. I am going to get Jennie down there one of these years, because in Milford, Connecticut, there's a dulcimer festival, and there'll be more mountain dulcimers than there will be hammered. I guess they're lighter. More people like to play them.
They're easier to play.
You know,
Yours is hard to play.
But it's going to be fun. I do not know who the main featured artist is for the mountain dulcimer this year, but the hammered dulcimer is a woman. They're flying in from Seattle. She's a Spanish woman, and she plays a hammered dulcimer very differently than most of us who play the Irish, the Celtic, the hymns or whatever. She's going to be a sight to see. I've heard her before when I was on the West Coast, so because I go out to a festival in Oregon almost every year, because I still have ties, because that's where I learned how to play the hammer dulcimer. But I'm excited, and I wish Jennie were going.
I'm going to go one of these years.
Because they're lessons. I mean, workshops are on all day, and they have different levels for beginners, intermediate, advanced, and some jams. So it's just, and then concert. So it's going to be a day and a half full of music. So I'm going to play one of my favorite songs to play, Hallelujah. I don't know if you noticed, I'm making little mistakes here. My hammers have two sides. One is a muted side, one's a wooden side. So I can change the tone, and I like to play more on the hammered side. As my hearing goes, I guess I'll be switching to the wooden side so I continue to hear. But
go, it's like they crisscross each other across the board, and they're so close together. I mean, how long did it take you to
Well,
figure out where? Like when I look at it, my eyes cross.
I know, and you try to look at what's called the bridge.
Okay.
You would think that those kids now that are really good at video games, you're like Donkey Kong, like we learned Donkey Kong in the 80s, you would think they would take to this instrument like a duck to water, because they're used to that quick eye movement. So we'll see if we get a new generation of hammered dulcimer players out of the video kids. So
I mean, I have one other. What do you have left?
that was it. That was it for me, except for
So
our
our
little
song
joint
together.
piece that we practiced once
All right.
together.
Nothing like flying by the seat of your
Right.
pants. Did you want to take questions first?
Oh yeah. Any questions? Yes, Penny.
What are the price ranges of these two instruments?
Go ahead.
Well, this one I just bought, and it was $4,600, somewhere around there.
I think I probably spent $60 on the big one. The littler one was probably about $120. Mostly probably because it was a handmade artisan. He was in Provincetown, so he was jacking the price up for people. But somewhere between those two prices is, you can get better ones, bigger ones. Oh, the one thing I wanted to mention earlier, and this one would cost more. So it's called a courtship dulcimer. It is like two dulcimers in one space. One is going this way, the other one is going this way. So the two people who are courting each other, you're playing it as duets together, and then their knees would touch.
Heady.
Very scandalous. So,
Certainly didn't do that in church.
so like that's right. No, you were doing that in your bundling bed. That's where you were allowed to play the courtship dulcimer.
Reason to learn how to play it.
That's right. So there you go. So that was an option. But yeah, so that's a larger one. There's also some that are double necked. There's a guy. What is his name? He's super good mountain dulcimer. He always plays a double necked one. African American guy.
Bing Fulch.
Thank you.
Bing Fulch, yeah.
When I watch him, it's like watching someone from outer space play. It's amazing what he is able to do on that instrument. But he plays a double-necked dulcimer. I struggle to deal with one neck, so.
I should say a beginner instrument's going to be $600 or less. I mean, a beginner
That's
would
pretty
not go.
decent.
And this is a higher end dulcimer made by a guy in the Jerry Reed Smith in North Carolina. So this was my fourth dulcimer.
But like, if you're going to be $600, like as a beginner, you are better make sure you really want to play that
Right,
instrument. Whereas,
right.
like, if you want to just try it for $60, that's dinner and a movie. So if you hate it, then it doesn't put it in the fireplace. It doesn't make any difference. Yeah.
You kind of answered a little bit of my question. Maybe you mentioned it because I was in the office. But is that with the mountain dulcimer? Would you get possibly outside of a family, or even within a family, like more than one person playing at a time?
Oh yeah. And you'll get people who will do more than one at a time, and some are playing a harmony version. You'll get people who are playing melody on the top strings, and then using the middle string and sometimes the bottom droning string to play a counter harmony, which I cannot, for the life of me, figure that out. There are some people who will play the melody just on this, and other people will just use the notes here to just play the accompanying chords. It works really well playing with other instruments as well. So sometimes, like later on, guitars became more common to play with it. But like the other thing that was often played when I was younger was the autoharp, and that's another instrument that's really melds quite nicely because it's also a stringed instrument. You are playing mostly chords, although there are those crazy good people who can play those things like I don't know how they do it. Lots of practicing. So you'll get a lot, and then a lot of singing goes along with it. It's primarily just to sit and sing together.
So you mentioned a zither. How
Yeah.
does a zither differ from a dulcimer?
So there's more strings and more frets on most zithers. What came across, and I think when you read people who write about the mountain dulcimer history, they're desperate to find something to connect it to. And so that zither is where they came up with the closest. The Scheitholz, which is the German instrument, looks very similar to this, but it is bigger. It has more frets. It has more strings. You are playing in a different way. But I think that's probably the closest comparison, which is not shocking because it was a lot of German and Scottish and Irish people who were in the Appalachian region. So I always find it really interesting that it has kind of a German instrument background, but the Scottish droning piece that comes along with it. It's almost like a melding of the two cultures when they were coming up with an instrument. I don't think anybody brought anything across. They may have had something, but this is much simpler to play.
Well, you know, I looked up zither the other day because I've seen it. I didn't know what it was. And it's not, you know, now I have an auto harp, and that's just strings, and you push the buttons, and that's all like, but a zither looked like it had two parts. It looked like it had like one section here of about 6 or 8 strings, and then a little break in the space, and then another 20 maybe,
Yeah.
which I've never heard one played.
Well, and they look different in different regions.
Oh,
too.
okay.
So the ones like they call them zithers, but they have them in Asian countries as well as in European countries. They're just kind of like all over the place. And I think it was for a period of time, and just from this history, a lot of times I think they're using the word zither to mean almost any kind of
Stringed
stringed
instrument.
instrument. It's not that you're like playing like this, where you're not like bowing it or something like that. So, you know.
Well, any other questions, or because we can play our last tune?
All right,
and
let's see how we do.
see how we do. We did well.
Try to tune to your D.
I'm amazed at what comes out of that with just 4 strings and 2 notes, D and
Yeah,
A, or D and
yeah.
G in this case for you.
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
really, it's a whole lot less complicated, but it does all right. Are you gonna count?
Okay,
something?
wait, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
I lost my place.
I messed up too. So let's finish it right. Let's go back. Can we go back to the, you know, that part?
Yep.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, where does that start? Does that start on the 1? I think that's okay.
Yeah, it's on the 1.
1, 2, 3. You'd only been here 30 minutes before this started. It's perfect.
We could have organized that.
Let's work on that one again. I mean, I think so. That could be, we could go on the road with that one once we got it. Well, thank y'all for coming.
Thank you for your patience.
I just want to point out too, I have a little bit of tiny nibbles of carrot cake here if you would like.
Well,
to
it's always nice.
All right, so who won?